WBNY.org to learn how to be a helper in your community. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Tune in 91.3 FM WBNY Mondays 6 p.m. for Mental Health Versus, where Carl Schallahorn mashes up music and mental health in a way you've never heard before. Carl dives into topics such as trauma, depression, and anxiety with compelling guests and captivating music. Mental Health Versus, a show both entertaining and informative. Check out Mental Health Versus Mondays at 6 p.m. on 91.3 FM WBNY.
All right, here we go. Living for the people. This is L. Nathan Hare. Welcome you to our broadcast, focused on providing insight into events shaping our national and regional world and the facts behind those events and policies that are shaping our world for today and for tomorrow. Join us weekly on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. following the New Goodman's Democracy Now! Program. And of course, our program is live, so you can call in, you can join our discussion. We really hope that you will. Our number here again is 716-878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. And of course, we're welcoming back Norm McCarter, who's our in-studio audience of one. Welcome back, Norm. We missed you on Wednesday. And of course, we have our citizen of the 21st century who, knows the ropes on how to move around in this new 21st century technological culture, Willie H., who gives us the ability to live stream the program. Welcome, Willie.
Welcome, everybody, to Living for the People with L. Nathan Hare.
We got to get him now. He's been distracted the last few times. It takes him a couple of moments, to jump in there. That's not 21st century stuff. 21st century stuff is instant. So listen, I want to take today's program. There's a lot of stuff we need to talk about. I need to say something a little bit about this women's history stuff that the young lady was talking about just a minute ago. Before I get there, we're prepared for today. I want to talk about Republicans revealing themselves to be essentially sympathizers to white supremacy. But not just that. It's not the fact that they've revealed themselves to be that. The question is, what does this say about Americans as a whole? How do American people feel about the Republicans revealing themselves to be sympathizers to white supremacy? So that's one. Second thing I want to try to cover is Jerome Powell. I've been talking to Willie about this for 3 or 4 days. And we've talked about this. We touched on this, Norm, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 weeks ago, that the Federal Reserve chairperson, Jerome Powell, seems to think that it makes sense. You all decide whether or not it makes change or sense, or if you still have dollars left in your pocket when it's all over. Does it make sense to sacrifice 3 or 4 million employed people and turn them into unemployed people in order to reduce inflation, the rate of inflation in this country? Does that make sense?
No, sir.
Don't answer it right now. I just want you to put that in your thought, okay? Because that's what's on the table right now. And I know that, a lot of you all in the audience get a little upset about people like Elizabeth Warren. She sounds kind of shrill, barking at you and so on. Well, she may be shrill and she may be barking at you, but what she's telling you is the truth. You just have to make a decision. Does it make sense to you? Now, I want to put it into a context. Inflation affects everybody. Unemployment only affects the people that don't have a job. So if there's 160 million working people in the United States and inflation affects all of them plus their households, and you can reduce inflation from 6% down to 2%, that benefits that 160 million workers and their families, right? If the price that you pay in order to reduce inflation is causing the unemployment rate to rise 2 or 3% from 3.4% to say 6.4%, that would add something in the area of 4.8 million people it would add to the rolls of the unemployed. So you would sacrifice the interest of just under 5 million people in order to protect the interest of 331 million people. Now, does that make sense to you? Okay, don't answer. Just put that in your thought. Okay. because I want you to understand what's really being said to you, because I take the position that if the problem that I'm facing requires drastic solutions, and the solution that I come up with is one that's going to cost, there's three of us in this room, it's going to cost one of us our lives. My position is that I got to start looking for another solution.
That's right.
Just because I came up with a solution that would work, but it would sacrifice one of the three of us our lives, that to me means I haven't done enough looking. I got to start looking for a better solution.
Not
right?
the best solution there.
Okay. So that's what Elizabeth Warren is talking about. I just want you all to understand what she's saying. I'm not trying to promote her to be president of the United States. That's you all's decision. I'm just trying to help you understand what she's saying, right? Now, the second half of the program, we'll see if we get to all of this stuff, right? But we had this oversight committee, now, notice that when the Republicans become a majority in the House, it becomes the Republican House Oversight Committee. When the Democrats had control of it, it was just like the Democrats Committee, but it didn't have the awe of being the House of Representatives Oversight Committee. It was the Democrats Oversight Committee. Now the Republicans are in charge, and it's the Republican, House of Representatives Oversight Committee. And the interesting thing is the people that they're putting up to be the testifiers, to tell you how government has been, this is the weaponization of government issue is what is in front of one of these committees right now. And the evidence they're putting up are three people who are claimed to be whistleblowers. Now, a whistleblower is somebody that works for you that peeks you doing something wrong, cheating, replacing good materials with bad materials, bad practices, versus good practices. Whistleblowers are people that tell on folks that do stuff like that. A whistleblower is not somebody who doesn't work for you anymore, who got fired and has an opinion about, your policies. I don't like your policies. That doesn't make you a whistleblower. It just makes you somebody with an opinion, even if you actually have an opinion. So we'll talk about that. And the last thing I want to talk about, if we can get to it, is this whole issue of Social Security and our budget. And I'm just saying to you, I'm trying to help us to understand, if the budget, if the deficit for this year is $1.6 trillion, and I can give you a way to knock off $800 billion of that $1.6 trillion without destroying the safety network, of SNAP benefits and unemployment insurance and veterans benefits and all those things that make up the matrix of services that we provide for each other in this country to address our nation's needs. If I can find a way to do that, wouldn't you want to take that way out first before you start talking about wiping out, 25% of the entire budget of the United States? Wouldn't that make the most sense? So let's just talk about these things real quick. And I'm going to have to talk about these first things quickly because I took so long introducing this stuff. But I went to this article written by Alex Woodward that was entitled "Oversight Committee Republicans Won't Sign Democrats' Letter Denouncing White Supremacy." Now, when you see that title, what does that suggest to you is the problem that the Democrats are trying to address? What would you think, Nora?
They're trying to address an issue, and the Republicans, they oppose it. They're going against it.
Right. So the Democrats are trying to get the Republicans to put themselves on paper, in writing, that they oppose white supremacy.
Okay.
I thought that white supremacy was something that was opposed by the country as a whole.
Yes, sir.
I thought that we fought the Civil War against white supremacy. I thought that we've been fighting white supremacy through civil rights legislation, the 15th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the 19th Amendment, the 13th Amendment, and so on. We've been doing this for at least the last 160 years, right?
Yes, sir.
So if that's the case, why would it be an issue for the Republicans who are a part of? We're not talking about just Republicans as a whole. We're just talking about the Republicans that are on the that are members of the House of Representatives. Just them.
This brings me to a question that I was wondering about anyway from the beginning. Mr. Hare, as far as being in the Democratic Party, how come we don't go after the same issues the same way the Republicans do, standing together, going after that issue, and fighting for it together? I mean, we don't do it.
I understand, but I've had this conversation with a lot of people. Okay, I need for us to revisit with something. The Democrats perceive themselves to be the big tent party. Being the big tent means that you got Theodore Byrd, he used to be a member of the Ku Klux Klan.
Okay.
A Democrat, right? He's a member of the party, right? You got Elizabeth Warren, who you all think is a flying off the walls liberal and whatnot. You got her on the other end, but she's a Democrat. Democrats have this entire spectrum of opinions and things that are amongst them. They have certain core things that Democrats tend to be in favor of is ensuring that we are not creating monopolies that allow people to be kings over the United States in certain economic areas of business endeavor. Democrats tend to be highly focused on commonality of rights, that everybody having the same rights, that you can count on everybody doing the same thing in the same circumstance.
Well,
Republicans aren't like that. Republicans are ideologues. They say, I don't care what your rights are. I say, I don't like hearing something that even sounds like critical race theory being talked about in school. So I'm going to wipe it out of all schools altogether. And if you don't do it, I'm going to close your school, right? Which doesn't even seem to be legal, yet they're doing it in Florida.
Right, with
Ron DeSantis, right?
Ron DeSantis. I'm just not really getting an understanding on with this and us being a Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm.
Democratic means basically staying together.
It means that everybody is in the same boat and you make majority decisions.
Yeah, okay,
right.
Exactly. Well, when we're talking about, what was the original question with?
So what the Oversight Committee, the Democrats are asking the Republicans is to sign a letter openly denouncing white supremacy.
Exactly. Okay. Well, as far as white supremacy goes,
right,
and going back all the way, just like you said, to the beginning of time, we should be totally going against white supremacy, but we're not fighting hard enough to get that out of the.
Right. So the Republicans act as a group.
Yes.
They vote amongst themselves, and they decide that the majority of us are okay with white supremacy. So they resist, signing this letter, opposing white supremacy.
Right.
Democrats, as a whole, oppose white supremacy, but they won't kick anybody's butt over it.
Yeah, and something
and that's the problem.
This is my point.
Sometimes you have to put your hands on somebody's neck in order to get their attention.
Something
right?
has to happen.
Right.
I mean, we can't allow this to go the way it's going.
But the interesting thing, and what brought this up in my head, is the Republicans always promote themselves as the party of Lincoln. How can you be the party of Lincoln and simultaneously be sympathizers to white supremacy? How can both of those things be true? Right? So that's what this is really all about. I'm going to move on to another subject. I just wanted you to understand that's what this House Oversight Committee is wrestling with. And, the Republicans not the Republicans, the people the Republicans are supporting, the 3%ers, the Wisconsin Wolverines, the Proud Boys, and this ilk, of people, Oath Keepers and so on, the people that have this shared view also are people that believe in something called the Great Replacement Theory. Now, the Great Replacement theory has never been true, ever. It's just a lie that got promoted by people in order to justify their campaign to get rid of people that they didn't like. So in Europe, just follow this out. You know, in your Bible, I know most of you all are Christians, right?
Yes,
so you
sir.
go to your Bible, right? Go to I think it's Deuteronomy, you know, and you'll find in Deuteronomy or Leviticus, one of the books that follows Deuteronomy, you will find the reality. I think it's, or maybe even be the Book of Kings. You find that the Assyrians or Persians, I think it would have been the Assyrians, that they conquered the land that people claim to be Israel. Now I say that people claim to be Israel because Israel actually divided itself into two kingdoms after the death of Solomon. There are two sons of Solomon, Rehoboam and Jeroboam. They became heads of two different factions that had governance over much of the Israelite people. So they broke themselves up into two kingdoms. Basically, 10 of the tribes went with the northern kingdom and they kept the name Israel. And the southern tribes, Judah and Benjamin, and they were like a piece of Manasseh, but mainly Judah and Benjamin, those two tribes, they stayed in the southern kingdom, and its name was, they were renamed Judah. So now the kingdom that used to be Israel became two kingdoms, one named Judah and one named Israel. The Assyrians conquered the northern kingdom, I think it's somewhere around 721 BC. The Assyrians conquered the northern kingdom, and then the Persians, I think, conquered both the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom of Judah in 585, I think it is, BC. I know you all say this guy knows a whole lot of Bible history. I'm a Christian too, so I know a lot of Bible history. My point is that when this occurred, people got deported away from Israel. The Assyrians deported and the Persians deported Israelites and sent them to places that became Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan. You know, that's why you have so many Jewish people in all of these places around the world. And of course, they ended up getting pushed from one place to another. They wound up being in Romania, in Serbia, in Czechoslovakia, in Germany, you know, and so on. Now, because these Jewish people tended to be fairly good at merchant science, well, that's because where they came from was the nexus, the crossroads between Asia and Africa and Europe. Those three continental masses, people who come from those masses to exchange with each other until they started having airplanes and fast boats, these folks actually had to come by land in an area that the middle nexus of it was the Jordan Valley, Canaan, what we call the Promised Land, today, Palestine today. And so as a consequence, they became really good at running businesses, running trade, doing tariffs and taxes and excises and, cutting deals and, that's what that's what you do. That's what you do. Right? I mean, I got it. Native Americans run around here chasing Bidens. I'm pretty sure there weren't many people in Israel that knew how to chase bisons, and cut them down. So they were good at that, in North America. They just weren't good at that in Israel, right?
So that carried over with the Jewish people to the day, and that's how come they're supposed to be so good.
What you know how to do, you keep doing.
Yeah.
Right. So, but the consequence of that was you had people who were trying to be merchant class in those countries I just talked about, in Serbia and Czechoslovakia and Germany and Romania and Yugoslavia, et cetera. They got ticked off. The Jews were a little better, at, accounting, a little better at, merchandising, figuring out what to match up with what, how to work out a deal for this or that. Yeah. They were better at it than the people that they were around. They took that as offense. Who are these people? They're not really us. In fact, They don't even look like us. They got darker skin. And so that's other issue altogether. The Israelites who got deported from Israel didn't look like the people that you see that are the Ashkenazi Jews today. They look more like Arabs, and so on, right? So that's another issue altogether. The point I'm making is that this idea of this replacement theory was something that was created by people that are like the predecessors of the Nazis, that would attack the Jewish people and say that the Jewish people were trying to replace the people in the lands that they were in. In other words, they were knocking you out of power and becoming the power in those places and so on. That wasn't true, but that was the script that was being run. You know how people create, a narrative that explains, what their behavior is? Well, that's what this replacement theory was. That has continued to go on. I'm being simplistic in this discussion, but that has continued to go on to this present day. You have white folks today that are asserting that Jewish people are not really white people, that they're really some, sand people or whatever their word is, for people that don't look like, European white people, that the Jewish people are not really white people, and that the Jewish people are trying to replace the regular white people. And the only way that we can defeat them is we got to drive them out, right? And so this became called anti-Semitism, even though that doesn't make any sense, because all of the people in the Middle East are Semites. You know what I mean? I mean, the people who live in Saudi Arabia are Semites. The people who live in Yemen, Oman, Arab Emirates, Lebanon, Beirut, they're all Semites. But somehow the Israelites of today, or the Jewish people of today, have taken the word Semite and made it only refer to them and not refer to anybody else who is a Semite. But that's another argument altogether. The main point I'm making is that this idea of Jewish people being a part of some kind of global conspiracy to replace white people in terms of people in power, to replace white people with Jewish people, that this is a scam. It's a hustle that's being run on people. And it only works because people look different than the European people. And this is the game that goes on. Anybody who looks different than anybody else, if you're the minority and you look different, you're going to be the ones that get picked on. You're going to be the ones that get blamed for stuff. You're going to be the ones that get discriminated against, and so on. And that's what's going on now. Now, you would think in the 21st century, I know that, Willie's the only one here who has an actual citizenship in the 21st century. The rest of us are just visitors and whatnot, right?
I wonder why I the only one to have citizenship.
I don't know. The fact that you know how to use these computers and whatnot, I think that makes you just like the original Jewish people.
That's a bad man, right?
You know how to do stuff the rest of us don't know how to do. Right?
YouTube.
Exactly, right? And so the point is that this is a scam that's still being run. So white folks who want to have power for themselves, that their goal is to preserve European American power over America, that's their goal. But to justify it without saying that that's what their goal is, they justify it by saying that the issue is that these Jewish people and these dark-skinned people, these minority-looking people, these Hispanic people and so on, they're trying to replace us. Now, I want you to be clear, there's a certain amount of truth in that. Trees grow up, they don't grow down. Over time, trees grow higher and their branches spread wider. Sooner or later, the tree is going to become the dominant thing in the area where the tree is if you don't knock that tree down. Mm-hmm. Well, we went from having maybe 3 or 4% of the people in this country being what we call minorities today to having 52% of the people in this country.
So it's growing.
Right? I mean, those that are school-age kids, 52% of the school-age kids in this country are what we call minorities. They're black, brown, Asian, Native American, et cetera, right? And so white folks who are in power right now are looking at that and saying, you all see what's going on here?
We have to preserve.
I've been telling you this for 50 years, right? these dark-skinned people are going to wind up being the majority in this country, and they're going to wind up being in charge. Now, you need to be real about that from a pure population growth basis. If nothing prevents this from occurring, this is going to occur. Now, because y'all younger, y'all might not remember this, but there was a time in the 1970s when there was a script being run around this country that we have too many kids in the United States. And the only way that we're going to be able to make the resources work out is we need to have fewer people. And if we don't kill people, we have to birth fewer people. So we went from having almost 3 kids per birth age married women to less than 2.
I think I know.
Somewhere around 1.2. We don't grow enough kids to replace the people that die. So the population of white people in this country has slowly been shrinking as a percentage of the overall population. The percentage of people who are black and brown and Asian and Native American, et cetera, those people are increasing. Their families are growing at 2.5, or so kids, for birth age women in their groups. So clearly, by the time we get into the 2040s, early 2050s, the majority of people in this country, if nothing stops it, are going to become a minority people.
I think I know where you're going. I'll be with you. I think I know where you're going. Where you're going is that they have to implement programs, anything, to maybe increase their births, or at least decrease,
including murder.
Right, decrease the people of color, kind of decrease them because they'll be taking charge. They'll be minority.
And notice how the policies work. They're making this idea that everybody got to have kids all of a sudden, right? Now, you remember 10, 15 years ago, this was not a big issue.
Right.
Right? But now it's everybody got to have kids except those dark-skinned people.
Right.
We don't need for them to have kids.
People of color, yeah.
Right? So how do we keep the dark-skinned people from having kids? Well, let's get them sick. Let's put them in jail.
Right.
Let's not educate them. Right. Let's just treat them, in a very ugly way and reduce their populations through casualties.
Well, the way I see it, Mr. Hare, the regular course of nature, even if they make us sick whatever we have to go through, there's no way that they're going to, if we keep procreating and interacting, there's no way that they'll be able to even, I don't know what the idea is.
I hear you, Norm, but I just want you to be clear. Right.
Progress cannot be stopped, sir.
If the game that you're trying to play, if that strategy doesn't work, you adopt new strategies.
Right.
So if they come to the conclusion that all the things they've been doing to increase their population and to decrease your population aren't working, they're not going to say, "Oh, it doesn't work. Let me just stop doing this and move on to something." Right. They're not going to do that.
They're going
to come up with other strategies, right?
Policies,
and the other strategies are going to be much more draconian than the ones that you are seeing right now. So it's important. Right. The reason why I'm saying that is the article is saying the point that if you do not adopt as your national value that white supremacy is venal, despicable, and a horrible comprehension for people to be even considering in this country, that we should not be endorsing or supporting or being in favor of white supremacy, period. If you do not adopt that, then you place yourself on the path of policies that go the opposite way, that actually go to support, white supremacy. So now you get Ron DeSantis saying that, well, no, you shouldn't be teaching people about, sexuality. They shouldn't learn about, how babies get formed. All this nonsense, right? That Ron DeSantis is talking about. Now he hides this under, alternate sexuality is crazy. People shouldn't be learning about that. If they got to learn about that, they should find out about it on an accident. They shouldn't find out about it on purpose and whatnot, right? That's what he's really running. But what he's really focusing on is the idea of creating and the ideal, this is the way we think everybody ought to be, and if you're not this way, we will legislate you out of existence. Go ahead.
I'm just thinking. I'm going to take us back to 1941. This is the same mindset that Adolf Hitler had.
Right.
He wanted to have the blue-eyed and blonde
Just
hair.
remember, Adolf didn't invent that ideology. Adolf simply believed an ideology that was already with wide currency across Europe. I need for you all to really get this in your spirit. Look it up for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Anti-Semitism, anti-Jewishism, if we put it that way, that was a dominant chord in every single European country on earth. Can I go a little bit further?
Yes,
Go
please.
further, sir.
Yes,
Because I know sometimes you all get this American nationalist thing. You feel real good about yourselves. We had Abe Lincoln. We were cool and whatnot, right? George Washington, Cherry Tree, and all that stuff. Y'all run that. I need for you to understand that the largest German population on earth in 1941, the largest German population on earth in 1941 lived in America.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. And guess where anti-Semitism was the strongest on earth?
In America?
In America.
Yeah.
America, the reason why America didn't get involved in World War II until 1941, until the Japanese attack, on Pearl Harbor, was because the Americans felt like, well, this is just between those Europeans and those Jews. We don't like the Jews either.
It didn't affect us at the time.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
See, so it's important for us to understand context. So my point is, we've lived the history. You can't change the history. History is what it is. What you can do is learn from history, and you can grow from history. You can get better, from history. And to get better means that you resist anything that would take you back to the place that you were, that made you a despicable person, that made you somebody that nobody wanted to be around, right?
Mr. Hare, if I hear you right, I'm also hearing that even in the Democratic Party, there might be a few people, they're not with them, but they're like America was back in 1941. They might be,
Listen, there are people in the Democratic Party who are remnants of the old Democratic Party prior to John Kennedy. The old Democratic Party, they were the Dixiecrats. Remember, the Dixiecrats were Democrats. Mm-hmm. They weren't Republicans, they were Democrats. So you had people that even when the Democratic Party shifted from being a supporter of white supremacy and, the old South and so on, shifted from that to being supporters of civil rights, and equal rights and so on, you still had Democrats that were Dixiecrats that stayed in the Democratic Party. They stayed in the Democratic Party because their access to power, their access to who were the judges, who were the appointees in City Hall and in state government and so on. In order to have access to all of that, they had to stay in, the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of complexities here, right? I'm just trying to help us to understand that if you know that what made you venal, what made you despicable, what made you somebody that no one wanted to be around because you were just a distasteful, ugly, derisive, contemptible type of person, was your loyalty to white supremacy, if that was the core of the evil that was inside of you, then taking a stand against that evil has to be a good thing in terms of putting you in a better place as a people. But that's not what the Republicans have done. They've gone the opposite way. No, we stand with our right not to have to openly oppose white supremacy. So I know we got to. You always throw that thing up there. See, you citizens of the 21st century really like that. You always throw that music on and whatnot.
Getting into the beef of it, Mr. Hare.
So listen, we're going to take a quick break and talk to our sponsors. So don't go away. We look forward to talking to you on the other side of the break here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY.
91.3 FM WBNY is proud to present Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman. Welcome to Democracy Now!
Award-winning investigative journalism.
Is the NRA imploding?
Providing relevant analysis that makes you think.
Secret State Department documents, including evidence of U.S. war crimes.
Fact-finding reports you will not hear elsewhere. Democracy Now! Airs Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. on 91.3 FM, WBNY, Buffalo.
Tune in 91.3 FM WBNY Mondays 6 p.m. for Mental Health Versus, where Carl Shallahorn mashes up music and mental health in a way you've never heard before. Carl dives into topics such as trauma, depression, and anxiety with compelling guests and captivating music. Mental Health Versus, a show both entertaining and informative. Check out Mental Health Versus Mondays at 6 p.m. on 91.3 FM WBNY.
All right, welcome back to Living for the People. This is L. Nathan Hare, your host. We're here with our in-studio audience of one, Norm McCarter. Welcome back, Norm. And we're here with Willie H., who actually has citizenship in the 21st century. Welcome, Willie.
Welcome, everybody, to Living for the People. We got a caller also.
Oh, why don't we take that call real quick?
Okay.
Hi, caller. Are you there?
Well, yeah, I'm here. I don't know how quick I'll make it, but I will stick to the point, I think.
Okay.
The topic.
Excellent.
I wanted to perhaps you left a certain bit of information that I find a little confusing, if not problematic. There is a hint that perhaps that you're saying that the sheer number of German origin.
I know where you're going about. It made it sound like all Germans were anti-Semitic, and that was not the case. I should have clarified that when I was on that point.
Yes, and actually the drivers of anti-Semitism in the U.S. were not Germans. They were good WASPs.
Right.
Henry Ford, now Lindbergh, I guess you could argue, was of Germanic descent, I guess, although I don't know how far removed he was from it. I'd have to check. But basically it was people of power.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people of huge industrial and monetary wealth were vehemently anti-Semitic. It was part of the culture. And I think what it boils down to is that any entity in power wants to keep that power.
Yeah.
Right.
And whoever is the easiest person they could scapegoat is who they will go after.
Especially if you look different. It makes it much easier for you to scapegoat people that look different.
Yeah,
right?
the looks are part of it, but I mean, I think they were also looking at, well, they might see, oh, gee, I'm seeing, how come every time I think I need to get a big loan, I'm talking to a Jew somewhere along the way or something like that.
Right.
I mean, whatever it may be, I think they felt most threatened.
And they brought it with them. I mean, what you said is exactly on the money. When these pilgrims showed up, at Plymouth Rock and, were trying to hit Flint to get fire and whatnot, they brought that anti-Semitism with them. That was with them when they were, the reformers.
They brought a lot of baggage with them. They obviously didn't feel Native Americans were human.
Right.
I mean, their religion. I mean, there's a lot of baggage that their religion brought that they brought with them, and they treated all sorts of people, and we continue to treat all sorts of people. And what it amounts to is our wiring is tribal.
Yeah.
I mean, we know that our instinction is to be sympathetic and to connect with people that look like ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And however, due to programs like Henry Louis Gates that have on PBS that goes on about our genealogical history, shows we are all ultimately related to each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, that's a hard...
it's a hard truth for people to accept.
That's a higher level, brain function that has to bypass our impulse to act impulsively.
Right.
So our impulsive instinctual instinct is to fight those who aren't like us and to protect those who look like us, immediate family.
Right.
And there's good survival reasons for having that because there was a belief that you could trust or you would know them better enough to know whether they're going to kill you in the middle of the night. Hopefully,
mm-hmm.
I mean that's sort of, I guess, the logic of it. If
they won't cannibalize you.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it would still happen. And then look at animal species. I mean, it's the same pattern where although there's exceptions where you've got these a horse that takes care of a dog or something.
Mm-hmm.
Weird little vignettes we see. So I think what I'm trying to get to is that as long as we recognize that the people in power will put up false fronts, put up scapegoats to have the populace who aren't as wealthy as them get distracted.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not a matter of anti-Semitism. It's a matter of anti-Semitism, anti-racial, all of these, anti-immigrant. All of them are all part of the same thing.
Right.
And actually, there's a history between Jews and blacks having fought this struggle very much together.
Right.
Jews are very active in the civil rights movement.
So something interesting that happens. There's a guy, his name is Byron Donalds. He's a representative, I think he's from Maine or someplace in the New England states, Republican. And he wrote in the Independent that he does not intend to sign what he calls an unproductive letter, by the Democrats, and on the basis that it's just showboating. And what does it have to do with the real problem, which he is saying is the illegal immigration at the southern border? Now, it seems to me that whether you are on or not on the immigration issue on the southern border, that's a completely separate issue from the issue.
Yeah, well, that's look, there's always something you can wave around that say, well, why are we talking about this when we should be talking about this? There's always something that's more important. And actually the counter to the southern border issue is, why aren't we more engaged with those countries where the people can't live there?
Can I share with you something? I talked about this. I don't know if you heard me talk about this before, but we talked about it in the last 3 or 4 months. It seems to me that we're spending $14 or $15 billion a year for us to chase reducing the number of people that come into the country from the southern border.
Right.
Why go that way? These people are walking from Ecuador, from Panama. I mean, they're not flying in jets. No. They're walking.
Look, all immigrants, whether they're running away from something or running towards something, are highly motivated.
Right.
And ironically, that motivation has been the engine by which this country has grown.
That's how when we didn't walk here, but we sailed here.
Well, okay, I stand. There is an exception rule if you're brought in under duress. The issue there is you survived it.
Right.
And I hate to say, once here, eventually at some forms assimilated.
Right.
And
became better than the people that were already
actually
here.
are in some areas thriving. Okay.
Yep.
So,
but let me put another piece on this now. So given what you and I just said, if the problem is people in Panama and Colombia and Ecuador and Santo Domingo or whatever it is, these Central American countries, if that's the problem, that's where the problem is. If you've ever been to the Mexican border, the southern border of Mexico, it's like frontier land. It's very underdeveloped. It's underdeveloped because there's not that many developed economies in that area, so there's no reason for it to develop. My point is, we could take American dollars, 4 or 5 billion American dollars, we could hire 400,000 or 500,000 people a year who come across the borders from Central America to the southern border of Mexico, hire them to clean out the debris in the forest lands, in southern Mexico, to create space to put roads and dig ditches and sewer lines and all that stuff that we had to do up here. I mean, I've been here long enough to be here when they were digging the roads to make a transit road from a 2-lane road into a 6-lane road. I was here when that was happening. I saw the people doing it. So
I agree in the sense that, and the U.S. has had a long history of having foreign aid. Mm-hmm. It's been viewed as a dirty word in the last few, decades.
At least the last couple of decades, right?
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's a political football, but it's basically, if it's done right, it's money well spent.
Right.
I don't think massive development projects that we're funding is necessarily the right avenue for that, because that gets very tricky, because we have our own development problems in the U.S. right now. I mean, so we're funding a lot of development that's really not effective, I think, for the grassroots population.
Right.
It's really benefiting the developers themselves.
Right. But think about this: if you get 400,000 people employed, pay them a little bit more than the minimum wage in that area. So in that area, the minimum wage is like $2.25, an hour. So pay them $3.50 an hour. That would give them an incentive for them to work for these operations. wherever you build new infrastructure, development will follow.
I think the challenge is capitalism, free enterprise brings with it graft.
Yeah. We'll bring graft.
And well, that's the problem. And then you have gangs that form to try to work. I mean, you create this whole cycle. And we have not addressed our own graft internally right now. And so it's very nervous of me to start thinking that we're going to always magically sprinkle our fairy dust of dollars and it's going to solve things. But I think what I'm trying to get at is that right now, the reason why this graft continues is the power structure is there, and it's preventing us from, and other populations of minorities and are now coming to the majorities, from thriving, from doing well. And so they've got to do their own form of graft to get where they're going.
Right. In fact, you're taking me to something I was going to talk about a little bit later in the program, but you're taking me to the subject right now. If it seems to me part of what you're saying is that you have to identify what your real problem is and then develop solutions that actually attack your real problem instead of picking at the edges of sort of.
Yes, but right now the real problem is, I think, the classist society that we're living in. We as individuals, the majority, have no real ultimate say in what's going on.
Right.
And we're continually blocked from that system through whoever is in quote unquote in power. So it might have been WASPs earlier, and now it's some broader. And what's happening is we are training now intergenerationally and interracially and wave of immigration. That each are learning how to game the systems on themselves.
Right.
And so now we've so what we witnessed in graft going on amongst whites, now we're going to see it amongst Jews, we're going to see it amongst blacks, we're going to see it amongst Hispanic. And they all say, well, that's how you play the game. That's how you get there.
And, of course, it's a Ponzi scheme if you look at it the way you just said that, right?
Well, the governments themselves, friends and family programs. So it was friends and program for the Irish. It was friends and family for Polish. It goes down to through every generation, and it's going to become, and it's already now friends and family if you're black.
So the question becomes, how do we turn that around? Or is there any way for us to turn that around?
That's right. And right now our governments are running on this friends and family mechanism, particularly in this city. And, but it's happening even at Washington levels, and that's not right. And so we have to break out somehow whether we need more election reform if we're going to have any salvation in our political process that breaks parties down more and also breaks down our ability to field candidates and don't have to have all the inside information and the power to be able to get on the ballot and stay on the ballot and stay elected.
Yeah. And
because right now it's not geared for that, and we're dissuading good people, I think, from running from office because it's just distasteful. There's just better ways to make a living in many people's eyes, and they don't want to get involved in that morass. And those who do get involved have other agendas at stake.
Yep.
They're not really there to improve the situation, and despite their utterances to the contrary. That's my.
Thank you. That's a great point. See, you're right on top of it. Thank you again for calling in.
Continue the good fight.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. See, because that's really where we're at. I mean, sometimes you don't have the absolute answer to the problem that you're trying to solve. But the answers that are being surfaced, that are being put up, those aren't answers. If they're creating more problems than they're solving, they're not answers.
Right.
So the solution is to keep looking for better answers, right?
Yes, sir.
That's really where we've got to be, and we're not there right now. And I was listening to the lady that was talking when we first began the program. She was talking on the Amy Goodman's program, Democracy Now! And she was talking about, and I saw her a few days ago on a broadcast, I think it was NBC, where she was talking about the fact that she had gotten pregnant. She had gotten through 2/3 of her pregnancies. We're not even talking about when people normally talk about abortions. So when you start talking about aborting your child at 2/3 of the way into pregnancy, it's because something that it threatens your life is on the table right now. Right. So she had, there's something in your body, and I wrote this down, that most men don't even know what you're talking about. At least I don't know. When she started talking about the amniotic fluid in her body drained, I didn't even know that you had amniotic fluid in the fallopian tubes in the first place. I didn't even know that was an issue. I'm pretty sure most men didn't know that was an issue either, which is why women need to be more in control of that part of our science, because they know more about it. It's a part of them. It's not a part of you. Men know more about men's reproductive organs than women know about reproductive organs. But I just want to get to this core point that in terms of finding a solution set, we have to always ask ourselves if the solutions that we are listening to, that we are entertaining, if they're going to crush another part of the population. Mm-hmm. If they're going to crush another part of the population, that's not a solution.
Right.
That's just not a solution.
Right.
You have to keep fighting to find a solution that does not require you killing a bunch of people. So I listened to this conversation with Elizabeth Warren and these, crazy people on the Republican, Finance Oversight Committee, and they're trying to come up with their rationale for why we got to slash, the federal budget by 35%. Well, you can't even do that. If you take Social Security and protect that, and you continue to increase the amount of money you put into the military, you don't have enough money left for you to be able to slash 35% of the federal budget. But what she was trying to get them to understand is one of the ways that we can create savings is changing the structure of our healthcare system. So Norm, can I just take you really quickly through this?
Yes, sir.
This piece? I was going to take you through this thing about whistleblowers, but I don't think we're going to have enough time to talk about that.
All righty.
But it seems to me that if our problem is Social Security and Medicare, maybe we could do something that would take those issues off the table. Here's the simplest way. The Social Security Expansion Act, introduced by Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren in the Senate, and by Jan Sikowski and Val Hoyle in the House of Representatives. Now they want to put an additional $2,400 a year into the pockets of people that are receiving Social Security. If the idea is for us to get ourselves down to a budget that where the revenues match the expenses, I wouldn't create a new expense in order to bring expenses and revenues into an alignment. But that's a separate issue. What I'm suggesting here, or what she's suggesting here, is that the bill would accomplish this by lifting the cap on the maximum amount of income subject to the Social Security payroll tax. We've talked about this. Instead of capping it at $160,000 of income, and then all of the income that you earn above $160,000 is not taxed for Social Security at all, why not just tax all of it? Period. Okay? If they did this, Social Security, according to them, would be funded for all the way through 2096. That's even with the $2,400 of additional benefits of, a year that they want to put into it. I would not do that $2,400 a year, because you already have a cost of living escalator in the Social Security Act. So, well, you all don't know because you all are children and whatnot, but to me anyway. So they got an 1.1% bump in Social Security benefits, for current beneficiaries. Y'all didn't get that because y'all not current beneficiaries. Don't give me any lip about it because you all got those relief checks. I didn't get one. I didn't even get a letter about a relief check. Okay, I want to revisit with that again. Okay, so don't get mad about the older people getting an extra bump from that cost of living in a lever. But my point is that you already have a mechanism in Social Security to increase benefits to deal with increased cost. So I don't know that makes good sense. But with the healthcare part, so with Social Security, you could do that by just taxing all earned income with the same tax, period. And all of those issues about the solvency of Social Security go away. Now, on the issue of Medicare, right, which is the other trust fund, right, it's going to be running out of money in the next, 8 or 10 years. You could take the surplus money that you would have created in Social Security and use that to fund the deficit that you have in Medicare. As people who are in the baby boomer age, which is like the highest growth population that we've had in this country, as those people begin to pass away over the course of the next 15, 20 years, the number of people that you have to support as seniors will also go down, and that will bring down your cost of funding Social Security and Medicare benefits. But if you restructure the healthcare industry so that you had a single payer, just single payer alone. Single payer means that instead of having 3,000, healthcare providers in the country, and you got to bill every one of them. So, when something happens, you got to bill VA for this, you got to bill Chubb Life for this, you got to bill Blue Cross and Blue Shield for this, and Univera for this, and so for that, and so for this. And all of that bureaucracy costs money. According to them, at minimum, you're talking 15% of the cost of healthcare is just the bureaucracy of billing. So if you could eliminate all of that billing and just have one form that everybody uses the exact same form, you send the bill to the same place. They got computers that if they can send rockets all the way to Jupiter and whatnot on time, they can figure out how to send all of the bills to one place and have that one place bill the Treasury and send you a check for whatever it is they owe you, right? And if there's any criteria that you didn't meet the criteria in order for you to get your bills, paid by that single payer health insurance situation. If you did that, the cost of healthcare in this country right now is as of 2020, is $4.1 trillion. There are planets in the universe that have never seen $4.1 trillion. Whole planets have never seen that, right? We spend that money on just healthcare alone. If you cut that cost down by 15%, you would knock out $600 billion worth of the cost of healthcare. That would bring the deficit that we have this year down from $1.6 trillion to just $1 trillion. These are solvable problems. You just have to think differently. Now, I agree that there's going to be people whose mouths are going to be poked out, and they're going to say, well, if you cut me out of the billing process, I make my money on billing. Yeah, you cheat people on billing. You're not going to be able to cheat anymore. Get a real job. I'm sorry. I can't afford you anymore. I'm sorry, was there a caller that I missed over there?
No, that was somebody for Talia.
Uh-oh, okay. I think she's in the building, by the way.
Yeah.
And so you get my point. If you restructure healthcare, you could change the structure in a way that helps you deal with your costs. Now, I just talked about billing. What if instead of having all of these private players, providing health insurance, you had 2/3 or 70% of the industry all structured under the federal government? Everybody worked for the federal government. You had basically the federal government was the deal. The people in the other 30% would be people who, because they got money, they could get health insurance to cover face lifts and, lip lifts and, changing your shoulders looks and liposucking, all those things that you do that are basically just your vanity and whatnot. You could pay for that through insurance that you buy over and above the basic core health insurance. Put the rest of that stuff into the general budget. You wouldn't even have a Medicare budget. It would just be the general budget. You would have national health care. If you put it into the general budget, then you raise taxes. It would probably cost you 3 or 4% increase in your tax rate to cover the cost of what the citizen share of healthcare has been historically. If you did it that way, you would be able to wipe out, because if you did this through having the federal government be the actual provider of healthcare, all of the cheating that goes on, in the business, people, you've been to doctor's offices where there's 46 people in the office in the same hour. How in the world can you have 46 people in the same hour? How can you be given an hour of service to 46 people? You got one doctor. So he's running around with some physician assistants and some LPNs, and they're putting a Band-Aid on this one, putting tape on that one, pouring a little mercurochrome, on somebody else, and they're moving along. I know I'm saying a lot with a little bit of time, but you get my point, right?
Yes, sir.
So that to me is a simple way for, I say simple in terms of the concept. Obviously, it's going to require a lot to be able to get that done. Go ahead.
Just real quickly, Mr. Hare, I'd like to be able to maybe coming up next couple shows, speak about some of your ideas, some of the different things that you could expound on, because we didn't really have the opportunity to really get into these
Let's
things.
talk about how we can deal with the problem at the southern border, right? And solve the problem.
That's one of the main. Yes.
See, now the problem we got with you all, taking fentanyl, I don't know what to do about that. I'm serious. I had this conversation with one of my cousins. I'm just not comprehending how we can have a conversation about you taking poison and sticking poison in your vein. Why are you doing that?
Don't make sense.
Okay, so I can't solve that problem. Somebody has to give me help on how to solve that problem. But listen, we're at the end of our hour. Thank you all for supporting us, and hopefully we're making some sense. Look forward to talking to you all on Monday. Have a great weekend. We'll see you all on Monday here at Living for the People, 91.3 FM, WBNY. See you all then.
Wanna be